Central banks. You probably heard the name in school, but no one ever really explained what they actually do. They don't make headlines very often. They don't run for elections. And most people can't explain what these institutions, so powerful over their lives, actually do. But here's the truth. Central banks control your money. They set the direction of the economy. They affect the value of everything you earn through work. With one keystroke, they can create wealth. With one decision, they can erase it. And the strange part is, they don't really answer to you. This is the story of how central banks rose to the top of modern finance. Not as neutral referees, but as players who write the rules of the game themselves. And once you understand how it all began, you'll never look at your salary, your debt, or your savings the same way again. Let's start in 1694. England was broke. A costly war with France had drained the treasury. What emerged wasn't a bank in the modern sense. It wasn't created to serve citizens. It was created to finance the state, and profit from it. This is the birth of the modern central bank. Not as an institution of stability, but as the state's lending partner. Over time, this power grew. By the 19th century, similar structures existed all across Europe. Privately owned, but privileged institutions. They printed money. They controlled reserves. They rescued governments from crises. And in return, they gained enormous influence. With almost no democratic oversight. In America, things were more turbulent. Americans had always distrusted centralized financial power. The first two U.S. banks were shut down for serving the elites. For most of the 19th century, the country had no real central bank. The result? Chaos. Private currencies, speculation, bubbles, panics. Then came the crisis of 1907. It was so severe that J.P. Morgan himself had to step in to save the system. That's when the pressure mounted. In 1913, the Federal Reserve was created. It was sold to the public like this. A regional, decentralized system that will stabilize the economy. So what actually happened? A massive central authority was born. One that controls interest rates, credit, and the money supply. And this is where things get blurry. The Fed is not a government institution. But it's not fully private either. Its board is appointed by the president. But its member banks are private. It's funded not by taxes, but by interest on debt. It makes decisions that affect millions of lives. Yet answers to no one through elections. So who does it serve? Officially, it has two mandates. Employment and price stability. But in practice, its actions often benefit the very institutions it is supposed to regulate. Remember what happened in the 2008 crisis. Interest rates weren't just cut. Trillions were printed. Banks were bailed out. Asset prices were inflated. The same thing happened in 2020. Corporate bonds were bought. Markets were flooded with liquidity. The result? Those who owned assets got even richer. Everyone else was told to be patient. The truth is this. Central banks don't just manage the economy. They shape it. When rates fall, stocks soar. When rates rise, markets crash. When money is printed, asset owners win. When rates go up, workers pay the bill. And even though they say they're independent, they're deeply intertwined with the financial system. The same people move from banks to central banks. And from central banks back to banks. Their language is deliberately complex. Because obscurity creates control. Today, central banks are more powerful than ever. And questioned less than ever. After 2008, the world became unrecognizable. Zero interest rates became normal. Money printing became routine. Trillions were created. Stocks, housing, commodities exploded upward. A golden age for those with assets. For everyone else. Inflation dressed up as prosperity. Buying a home became impossible. Wages disconnected from the stock market. Savings earned nothing. And people kept blaming the wrong things. Politicians. Immigrants. Bad luck. No one talked about the hand that controls money. Because the system wants this. Constant motion. Constant consumption. Constant debt. Saving is punished. Debt is rewarded. Everything is done in the name of stability. But it's not your stability that's being protected. When crises hit, it's not the people who are rescued. It's the system. The banks. Asset holders. The machine. That's what happened in 2020. Markets were saved. People were not. And this matters, because when the price of money is distorted, everything in life becomes distorted. Risk becomes impossible to measure. Retirement becomes a fantasy. Bubbles inflate and burst. And worst of all, people don't even realize what's happening. Your student loan. The price of your home. The return on your savings. All depend on decisions made in rooms you'll never enter. Officially, central banks are independent. But in reality, they serve the system that gave birth to them. This is not a conspiracy. It's a career path. But now, you're no longer outside. Because once you understand the system, you start to see its traps. Financial education isn't just about budgeting. It's power. It's knowing money isn't neutral. It's understanding that interest rates are political. And realizing that freedom isn't blindly following the system. It's keeping your distance from it. That might mean owning things that can't be printed. Staying away from debt. Accepting that endless growth isn't the only path. Because growth fueled by debt is like a treadmill. The faster it goes, the harder it is to step off. So what can you do? Start by knowing this. Central banks are not gods. They are players. And their tools are designed not for your freedom, but for the continuation of the system. You can't tear the system down. But you can stand outside it. Simplify. Diversify. Reduce debt. Own real things. Learn how money works. Teach others. Question the stories you're told. Because when the next crisis comes, the central bank will save the system again. Saving yourself will be up to you. History doesn't repeat itself exactly. But if you don't understand it, it hits you in the same place. If this gave you a new perspective, subscribe, brother. The answers are in history. I'll show you where to look.